prioritizing self-care in your life and what that looks like for you.
I had no idea what self-care was, right? I think as a kid, that looked like having a lot of fun, riding horses. I fenced like with swords.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I skied. I did all that kind of fun stuff. And then I think self-care in adulthood was born out of distress. That I've landed into adulthood. I don't really know what this is or how to do it well. I wouldn't have said it that way at that time. I just knew that I didn't feel quite right in myself. And what that looked like as one specific example is when I met my now husband, we would get into arguments around things early into our relationship. And I would be like, well, if you would just do it this way, then X would happen. And inevitably, we would actually reach that point. He would apologize or say something. And you know what I did? I found another reason to continue the fight. And it was such a great outside representation of the fight that was happening on the inside. Yeah. And so I'm kind of out in the world. I'm trying to make my way. And my husband at that time, both of us are in 12-step recovery, and he already had 5 years clean and sober when I met him. And he said, I love you and I want us to have the best shot at working, and you need to do something, whether it's going to Al-Anon family groups, whether it's getting a counselor or a therapist, but something, because I can't be everything to you. And that was the beginning, I didn't know it, of my self-care journey, which for me, self-care is developing an intimate relationship with myself. And more than anything, perhaps this is relevant to me in this season of my life because I have a boy who's 7, about to be 8, talking about emotional regulation. Right? I'm constantly learning, falling short, acing my emotional regulation, and my child is my teacher, right? My child is my teacher more than I am his, and specifically in helping me heal this. And so a very specific part of that for me at the moment is patience, developing patience, because I had so many emotions that were coming out sideways for so long. And so that's the work I'm doing day in, day out. And it just so happens that for me, what works really well is a consistency period in journaling, meditation, breath work, moving my body, and doing things that make me feel good.
Yeah, I love that. And you have a quote, and I shared this with you earlier on your website. It's one of the favorite things I've ever seen in my life. My definition of success is every moment I'm true to myself. And I think if we can, embody that and take that on, absolutely big cheers for that, because that lets you know and reminds you of your own value, that you're worthy of taking the time to do this for yourself, which you were able to find your way to. And I think it's so interesting. I was having this conversation yesterday with a guest about how when we become parents, these things that have never come up before will come up. If we've had stuff, whether you've had trauma in your background or not, of like, oh, okay, that's an area I could work on, or, oh, that's an area that needs addressed. Because our kids will model what they see. If it doesn't line up with what we're telling them, then they're going to go with what they see. And it's such a good reminder of like, okay, I need to work on being more patient. I need to root back to, where does that come from? Why am I so impatient? Where, what needs healing in that? And you talked about emotions coming out all over. I can totally relate to that. I spent years not dealing with those things, and they will show up. if you don't address them. And so I love how you talked about that, because it's such a true experience. Confidently setting boundaries. You've got a lot going on. And within that, sometimes when those harmful things have happened in relationships, which you talk about in your story, it can lead you down a road of just continuing to have unhealthy relationships because you don't know what it is. You're just trying to be accepted, be loved, be something someone wants you to be. And then all of a sudden you're surrounded by the wrong kinds of people, and people that are taking advantage of your vulnerability there. And so sometimes you get to a point where, okay, I need some healthy boundaries around the kinds of relationships and what I'm going to allow into my life. Would you say that is true for you, or just talk to me about, I don't want to assume anything. So talk to me about your boundaries journey.
It's ongoing. Because I'm constantly changing and evolving. We all are. I believe that the root of boundaries is worthiness. It's being a person who thinks well and feels well about myself. And from that place, I get to decide with much more clarity and then take the correlating action, what's okay and what isn't in my space. Yeah. I think boundaries can be totally abused in the sense that they often look and sound like, you're not going to treat me that way. But there's really sort of little inner work that's done behind that. It's more of a show. I actually often find in this period of my life that my boundaries look like saying less.
Right? You don't have to over-explain ourselves.
Totally. I mean, I fall in the camp of people pleasing. And I want to define that for a second, because I think it's misunderstood. I think that we often think of people pleasing as crossing our T's and dotting our I's and doing everything perfectly. And that can be one way that we engage with our people pleasing. But why are we doing that in the first place? Well, why we're doing it is because people pleasing, and the definition of it, is about trying to earn your approval. And my job, back to my definition of success, it's very related, is to approve of myself first. Yeah. Now that's the work of a damn lifetime.
It really is, because there's always things and ways that are trying to get you in your way of that.
Yeah, all the time. And to your point, context is everything. I might rock at it in this area, right? At home with my kid and my husband or my partner. I might suck at it with my boss at work, who is really, really challenging. And even more nuanced, the layers of it. Sometimes I might do it really well here, but when I'm stressed, forget about it. It goes right out the door. Yeah. Right? And if I'm in a meeting, maybe where I have colleagues around me, I find a little bit more courage. And so I'm able to summon that and I speak up. And so I just think it's an ever-moving target. And we're too quick to paint ourselves into the black and white of, am I good or am I not good? It just depends on so many things. And so back to boundaries, I think that, oh gosh, being in that quiet, God, it sort of feels new for me and delicious. And it speaks volumes. Yeah. So I could say so much more. That's what's top of mind for me at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you've brought so many. I love how you spoke to the nuance of boundaries, of how they're different in different areas of your life. You might rock at them in one area, struggle in there. I think that's really important to remember, because we have these black and white ways of looking at things, and we're nuanced. We can feel multiple emotions at one time. We can have multiple experiences. We can be really confident here and really struggle here, depending on our experiences and how we feel about ourselves in those settings. So I'm so glad you brought that up, in looking at it in that way, celebrating those things that you do well in, and like, okay, what's working here, and how can I maybe transfer that over and bring that along with me to this other area I'm struggling with. But it is that ongoing, but that ability to sit in the quiet with yourself and really, which is hard. It can be hard to do, but it's also where you learn about yourself and learn how to get comfortable with you. But it starts with us. You've got to be good with ourselves first if we're going to see ourselves as worthy of the boundaries, and then be confident in communicating them. So, and that's communicating them concisely, not over explaining. But if you're showing up in a new way to someone that they're not used to you showing up in before, then you have to communicate that. But I love the nuance that you spoke about that with. I think that's so important to remember. Thank you for that. That was so good. And I feel like we could talk about it for hours, but but go to Sarah's website. You can learn more.
Let me share a couple of quick things there that I think are important. I think one, the word I use for nuance is the gray, living in the gray, right? Like the gray is actually what helps us build self-esteem.
Yeah.
It's not just that it's gray. It's actually a way that we learn to give ourselves grace and we expand our range rather than just pitting ourselves into these boxes and then deciding we're good, bad, however we might talk to ourselves. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that I think is beautiful around silence or choosing not to say anything, not all the time, but in some moments when I feel somebody has crossed my boundary, once again, that silence is for me. That's not to give you the silent treatment, because if that's my motivation, and I've learned this the hard way so many times, right? I'm still making it about you. So I'm still trying to earn your approval. I'm still trying to people please you. And unconsciously, I've given away my power. So the silence is for me, and it's to practice a new way of being, that I don't need to respond to everything. You said it. I don't need to over explain. And sometimes that protects my peace and serenity, which is where feeling good stems from. Doesn't mean it feels good, but I can talk myself into a rabbit hole trying to prove my point and have you see it my way. And I end up being miserable. So I wanted to make that clarification, because I think it's really important that, again, it starts with us.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that. That was really good. Thank you so much. I appreciate. Yes. I'm just going to end it there. That was so good. Write that down, people. It's really, really good. And remember, that's so important. Thank you for that. Taking care of our emotional health as much as our physical health. Talk to me about your journey with that, the connection on that, and how you got to this space you are today, and the things that you do and how your work plays out in that arena.
I created something called a pump-up session. And it's almost like a life coaching session that involves movement and helps a woman specifically get out of her head and into her body. Because after years of coaching, I discerned that we can't just talk through your problems. There's actually a chapter in my book, Full of Herself, that is entitled Talk Therapy Isn't Enough. And I want to be very clear. Talk therapy is awesome. I mean, it's the basis of my business. We all need it. It's just that, how do we also engage the body? Because our emotions live in the cells of our body.
Yeah.
And we're very disconnected from our bodies.
Yeah.
I've had my own experiences where I was misdiagnosed with mono. I couldn't walk around the block at any decent speed without feeling absolutely exhausted and like I was sweating. I had stomach issues and I couldn't get any answers. And I ended up in the hospital, and a doctor said to me in the middle of the night that I'd never met, who was doing his ordinary rounds, Mrs. Moore, I don't know how to explain what you're experiencing, but I do know that all of your symptoms are correlated with stress, anxiety, and depression.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a light bulb moment that, again, in that moment, I wouldn't have used the language I'm about to use, but it actually, he gave me agency. Because I now suddenly wasn't relying on a diagnosis. It was like, oh, I had this innate sense I could make a change. That's not always the case, but we certainly all have some degree, a lot of agency over our body and how we relate to him or her. Mm-hmm. And there's a phrase I loved that I used in my pump-up sessions, and it was, when we change the momentum of the mind. Hang on, am I about to get that backwards? When I change the momentum of my body, I change the momentum of my mind.
Yeah.
And so I've found that to be true, that I tend to want to think my way into a solution.
Yep. I know. That's why we call this the Feel Podcast, because I had a very similar experience to what you're talking about. I ended up in the ER twice in the fall of 2019 with, very, racing heartbeats, skyrocketing blood pressure, bladder issues, and had every test in the book, wore a heart monitor for a month. They're like, there's nothing physically wrong with you, but there's years of stored up anxiety, trauma that you got to get out of your body. And that I understand that agency thing, because it's like, wait a minute, I'm physically okay. I can go do the work and do this. Now, that work has been the hardest work I've done in my life, but I will tell you, worth every minute of it. And it just that awareness and mindfulness it brings, and the awareness and how I understand what's happening in my body now so many times when something triggers or whatnot. So I totally relate to that. Love how you laid that out. Love how you talk about I read about the pump up sessions on your website, and there's so much power in that movement, getting that angst out, getting that whatever it is you need to process and move through. There's so much, because it is connected, and it will manifest in a way that's not so pleasant if we don't get okay with working that out, facing it, naming it. And there's many ways we can do that. But I love how you address that. It's so much power. And I like the agency piece. It's like, wait a minute, I have some choice here. And like I said, that's not always the case, but in this, for both of us, we had, all right, I can make some choices here on how I want to move the needle on this, and how I can find some healing in that.
Yeah. And I think, like every one of those practices I'm doing in the morning that I already mentioned are embodied practices, right? Mm-hmm. When I journal, when I'm writing, when any one of us are, we're engaging our body in the process. We're not just thinking about it.
Yeah.
When I'm meditating, the whole point is literally dropping out of your mind as much as you can. And to me, that's a back and forth process. Mm-hmm. Breath work, right? I'm getting oxygen in the dark, icky corners that haven't experienced some, maybe all day. I was in a meeting a few years ago, and this lady said something that stuck with me. And she said, I won't even get up to go pee when I need to.
Wow.
And all of the women in the room laughed, including me, because I know how
because we were absolutely. You think I can get one more thing done before I go pee? I can get one more thing done.
Yes.
I relate to that so much. It's so true.
Or I'll be sat on my daybed right through these doors here, watching some TV or reading or even doing a bit of work, and I'm uncomfortable. Will I move? No, I will sit there and be uncomfortable. And guys, like it's such a great representation of how disconnected we can be, or how we're not willing to listen to this home. I mean, we'll clean our homes and redecorate. And I love that. Like, I have a real knack for making a house a home. So I'm often doing a project and people will walk into my home and say, my gosh, it feels good. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? The most important home we have is this body right here.
Yes.
So I think it's just a wild ride and just loads of cool opportunities we have. And there's so much more awareness around it today of how we can really inhabit and be good to this body that carries us through this lifetime.
Yes. And you said an important thing, to be good, and recognizing when our body's sending its signals. It's not working against us and not letting us down. It's working for us and informing us of what needs to be dealt with. And I really had to change my mindset on that. And I think a lot of us do. So I'm so glad you said that. Thank you for bringing attention to that. So good. So important. It is letting us know, and like it kind of a cry for help, like, hey, hello. And when you can be in tune to that, then you can address it and it doesn't show up in a bad way, ugly way, hard way later. So thank you for that. So good. You do this so well in your work, but how we can support ourselves and other women in living unapologetically?
First skill that comes to mind around that is bragging. Right? Which has a negative connotation, right?
It does. I love the name of your book. Yeah.
Yeah. Full of herself also has a negative connotation, and we're on a mission to redefine that. So redefine being full of yourself as finding the audacity to love who you are.
I love that.
And bragging is the art, truly is an art, of talking well about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's a learnable, teachable skill. So I've done it with families, teams, all my clients who everything from an individual contributor to sort of a senior director of a global team. And I've seen the trickle down effects.
Yeah.
And so let's think about bragging from this lens. If we are well versed in talking about what's not so great about us, our weaknesses, our fears, we even do that in casual conversation. Like, oh, how's your day going? Oh, it's okay. I mean, how often do you really meet somebody who says, I'm having a wonderful day. Let me tell you what just happened. Right? It's very rare. So if we're only focusing on what isn't working, or we're playing it down, or we're dumbing ourselves down, we're telling half the story.
Yeah.
Well, as a coach, I'm always interested in, or often interested in, how do we tell the full story?
Yeah.
Right? Which is opening up the blind spots. We don't see what we don't see. We don't know what we don't know. I have them. You have them. We all have them.
Yeah.
So bragging fills in that lovely spot of talking about what we're good at, talking about our successes. Although I will also encourage women to brag about what isn't working as well, because I just think there's such a culture of toxic positivity, and I have no time for that.
Yes.
So I'm a much bigger fan of neutrality, which is removing some of the negative talk about anything versus being positive.
Right.
And the research backs that.
Yeah.
And so bragging is just, I think, beautiful. I think it's actually an act of humility, which gets right to the heart of how it's viewed negatively. Don't be too big for your britches. Don't take up too much space. Well, I don't believe that we were born to be small.
Yes.
or to shy away from what makes us great. Hence why we all have a yearning for meaning, purpose, and contribution. Well, we experience meaning, purpose, and contribution when we lean into what we're interested in, typically where our strengths lie, what makes us great. And so we don't need to be boasting about how great we are. We can develop the ability to talk well about ourselves.
Yes. And I think you hit it put different. Boasting to me is trying to get other people's acceptance for what we are, and revolves more around people pleasing and impressing. I think the bragging that you're talking about is just speaking the truth to what it is you're doing well, what's going well, and also what failed, but you were brave enough to try, and what you learned from it. Because I think and I love the neutral stance, because I think an important part of embracing all of our layers is I hate defining emotions as positive or negative. They're emotions. They're clues. These are experiences that are giving us information about what we're going through and how we need to walk that out to move that emotion through and feel it and process it in a healthy way. And the same goes with this, how we approach, how we share about ourselves, that neutrality of, this has gone really well, and I did this well, and this came across well, and this didn't go well, but I learned from it, and I was courageous enough to try it, and no regrets there. And moving forward, I'll do this differently. But I love the way you present that, because we were made to take up space. We were built, and we don't move anything. We don't change anything. There are powers to be that want to keep us small, because they don't want people that are in power don't want to lose power. And so so if we're going to make any changes in this world for women, how the narratives and stigmas around it, we have to show up as our full, authentic, truest selves without apology, and move and do it together. And because there's power in numbers of doing that. So I love how you talk about that. I love how you encourage that. I love how you've changing that stigma. I love the title of the book, Full of Herself, because we've got to get that full strength, that full confidence of living out what we were designed to live out, so we can make the contribution we were meant to in the world, do it collectively, and move these chains, remove these chains, change these narratives, change these stigmas, rewrite, definitions of things. So good. Thank you so much for that.
Couple things that sprung to my mind. Thank you for helping me see that boasting is about others and bragging is for me. That's brilliant. I hadn't put that together. And it's absolutely true, right? It's for me first and foremost. It's not to try and impress you or get you to like me. That might be an outcome.
Right.
But it's not the intent. And secondly, to your point, and I just love this idea. Bragging isn't, yes, it's for us. But what I find to be most powerful about it, and I do this in pump-up sessions or live events. So I'm watching a room full of women respond in real time, is at first, there's a struggle, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I could say about myself. Maybe I can think of one or two things. If I ask them to do 5 things, most of the time it's a massive stretch.
Yeah.
Once they start, most people want to keep going and it's hard for them to stop, which is an indication of alignment.
Right.
I want more of it, which only proves our point that bragging is a beautiful thing.
Yes.
And secondly, most importantly, it gives other women permission to do the same.
Yep.
And if I'm listening to you brag, I'm like, oh, yeah, me too. Maybe I could brag about that. Or, oh, you go. Like, it feels good in my spirit. It lifts me up. So it is for us, and it's so much bigger than us, which I think that's that beautiful gray, the power and in life, right?
Yeah. Love that. So good. Oh, such good stuff there. Love that. this importance of setting and coming back to your why and your values and everything you do. Your experiences have shaped so much of this. I'm sure you get a lot of asks. You've got a lot of work that you're doing. So talk to me about that why and that values piece that helps you make those decisions, because there's a lot of good things out there. It doesn't mean every good thing is for us. So making that decision of like, what good thing is for me right now? And what good thing is might be better for somebody else or maybe down the line, and having that why, kind of behind you and those values in place and making sure that stuff's in alignment.
Yeah. It's tricky.
It is tricky.
I find it the most tricky as a business owner because there's a space in time where yes is the best answer to everything.
Yes, absolutely. If you're building, you're trying to get out there what you do. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm in that phase right now with a lot of what I'm doing, and I'm having a hard time. But I'm like, okay, but I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to violate my own boundaries of time and space to, refill my cup. So absolutely.
Yeah. It's a moving target. So it's been an interesting journey for me. I will say I don't love the question why, because I have a penchant for overthinking, and that's where I'll go. It takes me in circles.
Yeah.
So I know the power of why and why are we doing what we're doing. And I don't ask it a lot of myself. I also don't use the why question in my coaching either, because I find my clients do the same thing. They start spinning in circles. So I tend to focus on what or how.
Yeah.
What I will say is I'm very clear that I want my life to be about maximum service. And that doesn't mean saying yes to everything. A well-placed no often is also of maximum service to whoever and why ever.
Yeah.
And, I had a good thought. Let me see if I can just recapture it. My life is about being of maximum service. And I'm not sure. If it comes back to me, I'll pick up that thread.
Okay.
And I can also add something else. That I'm a huge proponent, and I think we align on this, around feelings. Oh, I just got it back. Here we go. Right. So I agree. We're supposed to feel so many feelings at once. I'm often teaching my clients how to expand their ability to identify their feelings, because it's the base of so many skills, vulnerability, courage, blah, blah. And this is a really important and for me. I cannot make decisions solely based on how I feel, because I don't often feel like doing something.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
So my mantra in life is I have to act my way into right feeling a lot of the time. And I've become pretty good at knowing when to do that, because I've practiced understanding what I'm feeling. So then I've got some kind of understanding of what's the driver behind the decision.
Yeah.
My story has been, I'm a big thinker, I go-getter, and that's shown up in so many ways. And as a result, I've often forced things into being. So if something is coming to me, my mentor just said this to me, was it yesterday? We were talking about, I'm about to hire a new business coach, and it was unexpected. I didn't go out trying to find this or make this happen or figure it out. I just knew I wanted more. I know I'm doing the inner work, and I know it's going to evolve. And so she said to me, this looks and feels so different because you didn't try to make it happen. because it found you.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. And so when something finds me, I am saying yes a lot of the time because I do think it's in God's will for what is best for my life. But let me tell you, I don't always feel like saying yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think you pointed out something really important there. We feel in our body, in our conscious and ourself, we were built to kind of sense when something's right for us. But that doesn't mean it doesn't terrify us. That doesn't mean we're like, do I really have time for this? I mean, it's really on my heart. It won't go away. I can't get rid of it. But how is this going to work? So I love that delineation that you created there, because I think that is so true. We can both sense and know that this is something we got to say yes to and wonder, how in the world is that going to work?
Yeah. Well, and I think, what's right in the middle of that, I was just thinking, how can this be more tangible for folks listening? It's easy to say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm not like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? And I don't know about this. And I don't know about that. I might not feel like it all the time, but it's an easy yes, or it's
sure.
Easy how it came to be.
Right. And it might be easy to execute too.
That's right. That sense of ease,
mm-hmm.
Right? I might not feel ease in my system, different kind of thing, but sort
sure.
of how it's evolved.
Right.
If there's ease in that is often another little check mark against, okay, yeah, I'm probably supposed to say yes to this. And I don't always know what's in my best interest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's a very important thing for me to acknowledge often, because I'm a coach. I'm in 12-step. I've done a lot of work. I know a lot. I know I'm self-aware, but I still don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important. You talked about having a business coach, having those voices around you that can help you with that, and kind of ask you, so why did you say yes to that? What compelled you? This doesn't look like it's in alignment. What's the reasoning? Do we need to rethink this? I think it's so important to have those other voices that help us with that. And I love also how you talked about that question, why isn't for everybody in terms of the twirling piece. And so it's really, I think, getting back to what you feel drawn to, what feels authentic to you, what plays to your strengths. There's a lot of different ways you can get to what you value without sending yourself on a twirl. So I think that's important to delineate too.
I think that people point is something that's another little check mark for me. In saying yes or just making the decision, it doesn't matter if it's yes or no, is when I run this by you, people that I trust, my husband, my mentor, a couple of close friends who are in the coaching space, whoever my coach is in the moment, if they're not really raising any red flags and they're going, yeah, this sounds good. It sounds good for you. It sounds clean energetically. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's another little green flag of, okay, cool. I'm onto something. I'm not getting in my own way. And let me be clear, that's not my mom, my sister, and my best friend.
Yes. Yes.
They might be in there.
Right.
But it's some people who are third parties or have some really great skill sets that can contribute to a clear decision.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point too. Don't just surround yourself with yes people. Surround yourself with people that genuinely care about you and aren't afraid to say, are you sure about this? Or yeah, I think that's a really good thing. I think that's really important too. Living out of our own expectations versus others. Talk to me about your expectations journey.
This just came up with my mentor yesterday as well. Historically, I've had a lot of expectations of myself and other people. I would have called them high standards or excellence at one point in time, high performing, a lot of dysfunction in high performance, typically. And and that's born out of judgment.
Yeah.
For me, sort of feeling insecure, not knowing my worth. You've kind of mentioned my story a couple of times. I'll just shout out a couple of things that happened along the way. I was bullied when I was 11. It was bad enough that I ended up moving schools. I have alcoholism in my family of origin. So there's chaos there, a lot of focus on the drinker. Because if we can just manage them and get them under control, then I can feel better. I've experienced some severe mental health issues, including depression and suicidal thinking, from a lack of not knowing really where my agency is or how to harness it. I just knew that was like a born helplessness, because I can go to self-pity and martyrdom very quickly. Yeah. And that's what I was choosing when my circumstances weren't really matching how I wanted them to be. The expectation of what my family life, my business life should look like. So being in a 12-step program helps me enormously with that. Working the 12 steps has reshaped my relationship to judgment. I'm much quicker to compassion. And I still have a lot of expectations. And the good news is today I can catch them a little bit quicker. And go, oh, wait, okay, got it. Got to get back in my own lane. What can I control? And I must let go of the rest if I, again, want to feel good. Right. And I just think it's an ongoing. Yeah. Just all of it, right? I've already said that before. It's all ongoing. But I think the win is I can catch them, and I just have the tools when it rises to the surface. Yeah, I think the tools are the important piece, and knowing that you know how to use those tools and you're going to need them throughout life, because it is an ongoing journey. So important. Yeah. Thank you for that. So good. Talk to me about accepting the layered aspects of yourself and how that's affected the quality of the relationship with yourself and with others. It vastly affects my ability to be intimate with whoever is in front of me when I am in what I would call God's will, just something bigger than me, which is I'm very layered. And my layers are gorgeous. And it means that there is so much more to learn about myself, which is the work I'm most deeply committed to in this lifetime. Yeah. And also in the book, there's a story called The Power of And. We talked about this already, right? Like how I can be confident and scared. I can be ready to go and stalling out. I can. And it's the story that people have loved the most. And the suggestion in the story is stop using but or use it 50% less, like, oh, I guess I got to get going. I got a busy day, but I'm really tired. Well, I guess I got to get going. I got a busy day and I'm tired. Yeah. It sort of removes a piece of shame, a piece of judgment, and just makes room for both to be true. Yeah. And that's the way I think about, that's what gives me access to layers. Yeah. I love that and piece. That's really good. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So good. And when you show up that way, again, it changes the way you show up in your relationships, how people respond to you, how you respond, to people and situations. It's so connected. So good. So good. Yeah. I think that there's more of a highway for compassion and empathy. It's not like, oh, look at me, I'm this and you're that. It's right. We're all of these complex web of feelings and thoughts, which then manifest into behaviors. Yeah. And that just, as you said, just creates more connection. It does, because we can accept our own layers. We can accept other people's layers too.
we are down to our rapid fire. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Spending quality time with my family, watching a really good TV show, learning the lyrics to a song that's moved me and like listening on repeat.
Yeah.
How many seconds? Was that 3?
Yes.
Sort of a combination of meditation and breath work at the same time. And I have to go with journaling because I love to write and I always learn something about myself.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. And 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Oh, I wonder if this is 5 words. My thought for the year is a person among people. Well, that's 4. So instead of giving 4 individual, descriptors,
I like that. I
sort
love
of
that.
leaning into my ordinariness. I think accepting who I am. I'm quite exuberant by nature and I do a lot of speaking and leading in my business. And it takes an awful lot from me too.
Yeah.
It can, depending on my spiritual condition.
Sure.
And so leaning into the gal who loves to be behind my computer and working away quietly in my home office. Just a sense of ordinariness and not like, whoa! Look at me go! Yeah.
Well, it's in that ordinariness, I think, too, that we can refill and just exist authentically. Yeah, I think that in a way, which allows you to go out when you need to be the raw, and with those people.
I think it's also more sustainable because, our lives are lived the vast majority of the time in ordinary moments.
Yeah.
The bigger moments are fleeting. So if I can't feel even more content in the ordinariness, I can't enjoy the bigger moments as much as I want to when they come around.
Yeah.
So I think that's a correlation that we miss. It's a little bit like off topic and totally on topic. We'll spend a lot of money on a special outfit for a special event that we'll wear once. But how about we spend more money on the clothes that we live in, day out, that we have much more of a relationship with, that we require more longevity from?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I think we've sort of got that a bit backwards too in some ways.
We do. Yeah. That's such a great way to wrap that up. So good. Oh, Sarah Moore, thank you so much today. Talk to us a little bit about where people can find you. Also, listeners, this will be on our website on embracinglayers.com on our resources page. But tell us real quick before we wrap this up where we can find you.
Yeah, so moresoulsessions.com is our hub. That's the name of my brand. And on there, you can purchase a copy of Full of Herself. It's also available on Amazon. We have a fabulous Full of Herself blog that women love. We're talking about how I'm feeling full of myself, how I'm falling way short, and then tools and skills to help you build what your brand of Full of Yourself is. That's our main hub. Visit us there. Everything's there.
Okay, awesome. All right, ladies. I hope you feel as energized and inspired by what Sarah does and how she lives her life as I do. But let's go out and live full of ourselves this week. Let's go out and celebrate our wins and talk about them with others and encourage others to do that with us. Sarah Moore, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. I feel energized.
Good. That's great. So do I. All right, audience, we hope you do too. Have a great week. Check out embracinglayers.com. Check these things out and live full of yourself this week. Take care.